Okay, I'm still in chapter 2. I'm doing exercise 2.5 in critical thinking. So we're dealing with identifying IBEs. So make sure you know what this is. Inference to the best explanation. That's what your book calls it. C.S. Peirce called it abduction. So they're the same thing, abduction, or inference to the best explanation. That's A, and B is going to be balance of considerations, balance of consideration arguments, balance of considerations. If it's not A or B, you choose C. Okay? So let's do number 3. 3 says, yes, a card laid is a card played. That's I'll read the whole thing. Yes, a card laid is a card played, but I kept my hand on it, so I didn't actually lay it. So they're playing poker, I guess, and he's saying I didn't actually lay the card down. So basically we've got 3 statements here. A card laid is a card played, so that's statement 1. But I kept my hand on it, and the third statement is I didn't actually lay it. So the conclusion is going to be I didn't actually lay the card. That's a conclusion. Why? Because of 1 and 2. 1 plus 2. That's how you diagram the argument. The conclusion is number 3. Statement number 3. I didn't actually lay the card down. Why? Because a card laid is a card played. But I didn't lay it down. I kept it in my hand. So 1 plus 2 taken together is a reason to believe 3. So this is a deductive argument. Deductive. It's not an IBE because you're not trying to explain something. You're trying to prove something, that you didn't lay the card down. You didn't lay it because of 1 plus 2. Okay? That's deductive. So we're trying to identify deductive arguments, balance of consideration arguments, or inference to the best explanation. Okay, number 4. All things considered, we'd be better off taking the Suburban. Okay? Plus, let's get AAA to help us make reservations. Okay, so what is this? All things considered, we'd be better off taking the Suburban. All things considered. This is a balance of considerations argument. Balance of considerations. They don't tell you what they're considering. All things considered. So you assume that they've given some reasons. And they after they evaluate them, they decide to take the Suburban. Plus, let's get AAA to help us make some reservations. So this is an IBE. I don't really not sure how. Let's say all things considered. That's the conclusion. Plus, let's get AAA to make reservations. Okay, so basically we've got for the first statement, all things considered, we better take. Premise 1 is all things considered. So I'll just put all things considered. All things considered. They don't tell you what they've considered, but they've said all things considered, we should do 2. We're better off taking the Suburban. So that's the conclusion. We're better off taking the Suburban. Then let's say plus, let's get AAA to make reservations. I guess you could say that, put that as another reason too. So 3. It'd be 1 down to 2 and 3 down to 2. You could probably do it just 1 down to 2. But maybe I think 3 would count too. So I'd say 1 down to 2 and 3 down to 2. This is a balance of considerations argument because all things considered. They don't tell you what they are, but it's balance of considerations argument. Okay, so let's do another one here. Let's do number 5. Okay, this is exercise 2.5, number 5. Jackson will get an A in the course. This is only 2 statements. Jackson will get an A in the course since he aced the final. So that's two statements. The conclusion is that he's going to get an A in the course. So Jackson will get an A in the course. That's the conclusion. I'll just put Jackson. He's going to get an A in the course. Why? Well, he aced the final. He did really good on the final. Aced the final. Now, I would say that this would be a, well, let's see what they want to know. Jackson will get an A in the course since he aced the final. Inference to, that's not an IBE, and it's not balanced to considerations. So this is C, neither of the above. This is an inductive argument. It's making a prediction. He aced the final. He probably, the assumption is, well, the assumption is if you ace the final, if you did really well in the final, you'll probably, if you get an A in the final, you'll probably get an A in the course. Probably. This is not it's not an IBE. It's not inference to the best explanation, because inference to the best explanation, you're trying to explain something. You're not trying to explain anything here, and it's not balance of considerations argument, because there's only one reason given. There's no balance of considerations. So the answer would be C. It's a prediction, and all predictions are inductive arguments. Okay, let me see here. Okay, this is exercise 2.5. Let's do another one here. Let's do number 8. He made threats, plus he had the motive. So we've got one statement, he made threats. I'll just abbreviate this stuff. He made threats. 2, the statement 2 is he had the motive. He had the motive. Not only that, but who else had access to a gun? So no one else had access to a gun. He had access to a gun. If Mitchell didn't do it, I don't know who did. So the conclusion of this, it's put in. I mean, if you have to kind of rephrase it. The person is arguing that. Well, if Mitchell, I'll just put that as a premise. Okay, if Mitchell didn't do it, they put it in the form of a question, who did it? I would say, if Mitchell didn't, if you want to express what the person means, if Mitchell didn't do it, no one else could have. So basically, it's either Mitchell or no one else. So the conclusion is going to be Mitchell. It actually doesn't say Mitchell did it, but so this is going to be an enthymeme. The conclusion is implied. So Mitchell did it. So that will be 5. So if you're going to diagram it, you'd have the conclusion is Mitchell did it, or what did he do? He shot the person. I don't know if they killed him or not, but and the reason would be because of 1. Who else said 2 plus 3 plus 4. And this is actually shot whoever. I'll just put shot him. If Mitchell didn't do it, who else did? That would be premise 4. If you put all these together, you get the conclusion. The implied conclusion is that Mitchell shot the person. So this is inference to the best explanation. No, actually, it's not inference to the best explanation. It's trying to prove that he did it. Inference to the, it is. Inference to the best explanation. The best explanation for the shooting is that Mitchell did it. So that's an IBE. Inference to the best explanation. You're trying to explain the murder or the shooting. Okay, now let me see the next thing I want to go over here. Again, when you read these chapters, make sure you read the recap at the end of the chapters. Okay, I'm going to do exercise. These are just true or false questions. Exercise 2.6. These exercises this is a very important exercise to do because it will basically test your understanding of everything you read in the chapter. Number 1, arguments that are relatively strong or weak are called blank arguments. And the answer is, arguments that are strong or weak are called inductive arguments. So the answer to number 1 of exercise 2.6. Exercise 2.6. Number 1, the answer is inductive. So 1, inductive is the answer. 2, all valid arguments are sound arguments. False. All sound arguments are valid, right? But all valid arguments are not sound, because if the argument is valid and doesn't have a true premise, if one of the premises is not true, it's not sound. So 2 is false. 3, all sound arguments are valid arguments. That's true, because you have to remember that a sound argument is valid plus all the premises are true. So every sound argument is valid. So 3 is true. Number 4, if a valid argument has a false conclusion, then not all of the premises can be true. Okay, so if we know the argument is valid, it says if a valid argument has a false conclusion, then not all of its premises must be true, and that statement is true. We know they can't all be true, because in a valid argument, you cannot have true premises and a false conclusion. In a valid argument, if the premises are true, the conclusion has to be true. It tells us that it's a valid argument. Therefore, we know we cannot have all premises being true. Number 4 says, if a valid argument has a false conclusion, then not all of its premises can be true, and that statement is true. Okay. Number 5. This is exercise 2.6. Number 5. A sound argument cannot have a false conclusion. 5 is true. If you have a sound argument, by definition, a sound argument is valid and it has a true conclusion. And it has all true premises. 6. Strong and weak are absolute terms. False. Strong and weak are not absolute terms. It's a matter of degree. Absolute terms would be like true and false, because something is either true or false. Absolutely. But strong and weak refers to the degree of certainty. Something which is more probable than another argument is stronger than that argument. Okay, it's not an absolute. We're not talking about absolutes. So 6 is false. Number 7, if you try to demonstrate a conclusion, you're using a deductive. The answer is deductive, because remember that if you remember reading in the chapter, when you demonstrate something, that's a deductive argument. When you have an inductive argument, you don't demonstrate something, you support the conclusion. So deductive arguments demonstrate the conclusion. Inductive arguments support the conclusion. I'll do one more because I'm running out of time here. 8, when a conclusion has been proved beyond a reasonable doubt, it has always been demonstrated, and that's false. Beyond a reasonable doubt means it supports the conclusion, doesn't demonstrate it. When you demonstrate a conclusion, you demonstrate it with 100% certainty. Okay, so that's exercise. I'll continue do a few more of these exercises. Okay, so that's all for now.